That was the moment when I decided, that's enough, I'm out of here. And that very
evening I left. I knew what could happen to Jewish people like myself. I knew what was already happening, so I escaped through the Alps and I headed to America because I knew it wasn't going to stop.
Stunned by the sudden thrust of the Nazi drive into the North countries, troops rallied around loyal officers to defend their homeland. This scene was repeated in hundreds of Norwegian villages, even as the enemy moved in for the kill.
We are shocked by the almost incredible eyewitness stories that come to us. Stories of what is happening at this moment to the civilian population of Norway.
To my friend and colleague, Mr. Winston Churchill.
To sign the most humiliating armistice in the history of France, as wave after wave of bombers pounded the city into a raging inferno. Göring waited for his finest hour, that slowly died amid the flaming wreckage and the undaunted courage of the savage air-pounding of the war. Bracing themselves against Hitler's savage bombing attacks, the seemingly
Again, those were explosions overhead. Earlier this evening, we heard a number of bombs go sliding and slithering across the fall several blocks away.
I speak to you for the first time as Prime Minister in a solemn hour for the life of our country, of our empire, of our allies, and above all, of the cause of freedom.
Hundreds died as 1,500 fires burned historic landmarks into blackened shells of debris.
We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall never surrender.
Hitler unleashed the power of his Luftwaffe in an effort to conquer Britain from the air. Military statistics proved British victory. Englishmen looked in vain for squadrons of Nazi aircraft. Britain's skies were scarred by brutal combat.
If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be freed. But if we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, including all that we have known and cared for, will sink into the abyss.
With a third of Europe now under Nazi control, America still sits on the sidelines. Many believe the war to be Europe's problem. Recalling the horrors of World War I, the majority of Americans don't want to get involved in another European war. President Franklin Roosevelt attempts to convince them otherwise.
There are many among us who in the past closed their eyes to events abroad because they believed that what was taking place in Europe was none of our business. That we could maintain our physical safety by retiring within our continental boundaries. Obviously, a defense policy based on that is merely to invite future attacks. To those who would not admit the possibility of the approaching storm, the past weeks have meant the shattering of many illusions.
On September 16, 1940, Roosevelt signs the Selective Training and Service Act, the first peacetime draft in American history. All able-bodied men between 21 and 30 must register for military service. Though Congress approves the bill, it is careful to call it a national defense measure. The draftees may only be sent to defend American-held territories.
I told my brother I'm gonna get grabbed in by this draft. And sure enough, I'm the first number in my town.
In upstate New York, a soft-spoken farm boy named Archie Sweeney has just been drafted.
Things are already hard enough at home, especially since Mama died. She made us promise we would stick together, and we told her we would.
Sweeney is on his way to Fort Bragg in North Carolina. He has never been outside of New York State before, or on a train.
Hopefully all this will blow over soon, and I can get back home.
After several failed attempts, Austrian immigrant Jack Werner abandons his dream of breaking into the movie business. Instead, he takes a job in a flower shop.
One day, out of nowhere, I run into Ralph Lieben, a friend of mine I hadn't seen in years. Ralph's an American I met in Paris after I escaped Austria. He sort of took me under his wing. Helped me with my English. But that was a long time ago. Ralph tells me the latest news from Europe. It's hard to imagine. Now those filthy Nazis are parading around like they own the place. The more Ralph and I talk about the Germans, the angrier I get. Somebody needs to stop them before they take over the entire world. That's when I realized it's time to stop talking and start doing something about it. Taking actions instead of words. I mean, we have been living with that for years and years. You have to understand that my life and his life were really almost completely obsessed with Hitler and what Hitler was going to do and the state of the world. And we decided that, you know, it's about time to stop talking and doing something. That's when we took the critical action of going down to Fort MacArthur in San Pedro and enlisting in the army.
The military Archie Sweeney and Jack Werner join has only just begun to build up its arsenal. 2 years ago, the United States had the 17th largest army in the world, smaller than tiny Romania's. And almost 2/3 of